a motion to approve the minutes of October 19th and November 9th.
I so moved.
I'll second.
Okay. And do we have any questions from the audience?
I don't see anything.
How can you?
You're not recognizing people again.
Yeah,
wait,
Colonista
I
too
see.
has his hand up.
Who's this? Brian Curry?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Brian.
Can I speak now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to challenge all the motions which were held during the meeting that apparently occurred on the 16th of October because it appeared to be a closed, non-executive session meeting that the public was not admitted to. I noticed in the meeting minutes that it said that Barry reported this, and this is not the only example of township meetings which have been held, which people, myself personally, have not been admitted to. There is a pattern to this.
Okay, well, let's go. Well, first, you said November 16th? That's today.
That was the
Hold
meeting
it.
last month where we had
October the 19th, and it was the last
October 19th.
October.
Okay.
that was the meeting we had the issue with the names, and I told Barry about people needed to give their names, and that's why for safety reasons, we changed it for this meeting, but that was during that meeting. And I think Brian Curry and Maria Jacobs and maybe one other that was trying to get in.
Yes, and it was also, it's online.
Yeah, that they had to state their name and address, and I told Barry, I was saying in the chat repeatedly, and nobody was providing their name and address. So we for safety reasons, I was told not to let them in.
Yeah, I don't know if we can do that, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's how that happened.
So now you've changed it so that they're on mute until they do. You know, if they need to speak, then they would have to give their name and address like normal in a
Right,
public meeting.
right.
Right.
Okay,
It
that's
wasn't
fine.
done malicious.
And also note that they are online. So anybody, that missed them can view them.
But you were not able to participate in the meeting.
Correct.
That is
I'm
the
just
real
saying that
problem.
you can watch them too, so you could catch up on them.
The
Okay,
state
well, I mean-
sunshine law doesn't say anything about watching them afterwards. It says we can attend them.
You're correct, Brian, but we were having problems and it's corrected now.
Okay, I mean, as far as, I think you wanted it all erased or something, Brian?
What's
The
that again,
meeting
Mike?
erased? What did you want to happen?
There were a number of motions passed during the meeting, and I'm challenging approval of the motions because that is what the Pennsylvania state law says. In addition, the Pennsylvania state law says the people need to speak their name. It says nothing about addresses. And in today's environment, with the use of addresses to dox people, that angry mobs can show up outside of their house and other things, asking for addresses and publicizing them is not a good thing. My opinion on that, but the state law doesn't require it either.
Okay, well, that's fine. As far as erasing that meeting or the motions of, it was a public meeting. Some people were there and were able to talk. We'd have to speak to Joe and say if somebody was not able to speak at a meeting, does that negate the whole meeting? It's almost like if we had a meeting at the township building and after a little while people locked the doors and they couldn't get in, would that negate the meeting or not? I mean, I'm guessing. John, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, let me weigh in on this if I may.
Oh, Joe, I didn't know you were on. Okay.
People have to have the opportunity to comment before you take action. If they were prohibited from doing that, then the action you took would be invalid. So I would, at tonight's meeting, just make a motion to ratify all motions made at the last meeting, and then open that ratification motion up for a vote and
Okay.
up for public comment.
Okay,
That's a way to cure it. He's correct in what he's saying.
okay,
Except though, his comment about you can't require addresses, that's not the law. You can require addresses so you know who lives in the township and who does not. Those different rights pertain to people living in the township versus people who do not.
okay.
Hello.
Joe.
Jacobs has her hand up.
Yes, I'd just like to point out that during that meeting, it did say that we needed to put up our name and address. However, it also said that that function was not available.
Oh, you're
So-
coming.
No,
When you-
that, so we were trying to do what you asked us to do. I was not avoiding that by any means. And then, and furthermore, the next day I sent a letter to the township supervisors, all three of them, plus the township manager, requesting that that meeting be either reheld or that there was opportunity for discussion again on all of the items. And honestly, the minutes to that meeting are not very clear, so I don't know how we can actually have public comment without bringing up each item again. But I also want to note that not one supervisor or township manager responded to my letter.
Sorry.
Brian has his hand up again.
Okay, I'm going to go and second what Maria said. I have sent in a number of emails to the township managers, or excuse me, the supervisors and the township manager about this issue of not being admitted, and I had no responses. You know, it's not good. Secondary question for Joe, the solicitor, what law is it, Pennsylvania state law is it, that says that we need to provide our addresses?
The board is permitted to not accept comments from people outside the township. So if you don't live or own land inside the township, you can be prohibited from speaking at a public meeting. Based on that, you're perfectly legal for them to ask what your address is so they can determine whether you live in the township or not.
So it's not a law per se, but it's the board can go and establish rules and regulations. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the board can prohibit people from commenting who don't live in the township. So without giving your address, how do you know whether that person lives in a township or not?
Okay.
They can prohibit it, but you're not saying that they have to.
They do not have to, but they have the ability to if they so choose.
Okay.
Okay.
I can see they can ignore it, but hey.
Okay. So moving on, does anybody have the motions that were there for the 19th meeting?
I have all the minutes.
Are all the motions in there? Do we have the
Yes,
agenda
they are.
for they are in there?
Yeah. They're on the website also. The agenda's on the website and they're all there.
Okay, well, we need to go through them all.
Mhm.
Well, Mike, I think what Joe Glory suggested is we can make a motion that would cure having to go through all of those. Joe, could you repeat that? What our motion would be?
I think you can do a motion to ratify all the motions made at the last meeting and open that motion up for public comment so people can discuss whatever they wanted to discuss on any one of the motions.
Okay, that makes sense. Instead of doing one at a time, just do the whole thing and let people choose which ones they want to question. Okay.
I'm gonna, yeah,
So you want to get that over with now?
yes, right now, while we're trying to approve these minutes.
Okay, so can somebody make that motion to ratify the,
Sarah's making that motion.
And second,
okay, any comments?
Brian has his hand up.
Okay, Brian?
The comment that I have is, we didn't know that this ratification was going to take place. I would have, might have, I'm not sure which, gone through and reviewed them in some greater detail with this. And I know I have some specific questions about items in the meeting minutes, and maybe one of them's an item that's going to be supposedly approved right now. So it's a problem that, you're suddenly doing this without time for the public to actually listen to or read and see whether they have comments about specific things that you're going to, group ratify. And one thing I noticed is, Mike, if you were going to vote for this, you
I
were
can't.
not even at the meeting.
That
Have
is-
you reviewed all those meeting minutes and motions?
No, I can't vote on this, Brian. I wasn't here on that meeting.
Okay, but Brian, you're saying you've got some areas in the minutes where you have questions. Could you please review the minutes and ask those questions quickly?
I had two particular things that, happened to catch my eye, but I did not look at all of them in detail. The one item that I had is the proposed public safety building. And I didn't see anything in the meeting that anyone else was asked for a proposal for this, who those people were, or what the selection criteria was. Was this done, was this that somebody happened to be a friend of somebody and they were selected on that basis? There's
Brian,
nothing in the meeting that says
you know
that.
Brian, you know better than that. So I believe
Sarah?
we announced that we announced we were putting it out for bid, and we announced the award.
Okay, so it was bid out.
Yeah,
Fine, that answers that question. Thank you very much. It wasn't apparent from the way the minutes meetings were written. And Sarah, maybe you can answer this one, because on approval of Bryn Coed change number 8, Ms. Schick asked what the main water vault did for the barn. And there was no response to that in the meeting minutes. What did it do?
I wonder if I remember.
Does anyone know?
That was the change order we had to have to remove that big tank. It was-
Reading in further in here, which I didn't quote in here, but from memory, it was something like a 14-foot deep vault that had a well down in the bottom of it.
Okay.
And you asked, what the main water vault did for the barn.
It had to do with the water supply for keeping it clean, making sure they had enough water. It was a highly water-intensive operation.
Okay. Those are the questions I had. It caught my attention, but that's not necessarily exclusive because, again, I did not look through it in detail.
Thank you.
What do you think, Joe?
What do I think about what?
Well, the fact that people didn't get to ask questions during that meeting.
Well, you're giving them a chance to ask those questions now.
So
Okay,
please call the, fine.
so any other questions out there? Kathy, Michelle?
I don't see anybody's hands up. Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, all those in favor, I'll have to
Aye.
abstain.
Aye.
Okay. Next is the police report. Mike?
Hey, good evening. In October, for the month of October, the police department handled 170 calls for service. investigated 9 crimes, had 4 arrests, and 53 traffic stops. And
What happened?
I don't know. Where'd he go?
Disappeared.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Lost them.
Okay, we'll move on to the bills list, and when he comes back, he can finish up that report. Do we have a motion for the bills?
I make a motion to accept the bills list.
The amount of $984,704.20.
Okay,
And I'll second.
any questions out there, Kathy or Michelle?
Brian has his hand up.
Okay, Brian?
Brian,
Brian?
you're on mute. I can't. There you go.
I think I'm unmuted. Is that true?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, now you're good.
Okay. The question I have here is, we had a light salt snow winter last year, and I didn't go back and look at all the bills list, but I remember we were purchasing salt all year long so that we had plenty of salt there. And yet we just got a big bill for, let's see, 370 odd thousand tons of salt. Like, you know, what happened that we had a lot of salt left and now we need a lot of salt?
Yep.
Mike, actually Mike's on. He can,
Mike, you want to answer that?
Yes, the purchase of that salt was for the 2019 contract that we were required to purchase. There's still some outstanding that is required to be purchased. And then that does not include this year's contract. So we are required to purchase 60% of what we estimate. And that comes, we have to estimate that in the spring prior to that season. Does that make sense?
Okay. So this is last year's salt.
Correct.
We're purchasing. We had a full bin before. Do we have a pile of salt stored somewhere?
Yes, the remainder of that is being stored at Oceanport in Delaware because we do not have a facility big enough to take it all at the moment.
Okay.
So in other words,
go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
we have salt being stored, I'm going to say off-site, so to speak.
Exactly.
And we have a contract that we need to purchase salt again this year that we need to purchase 60% of.
Yes.
Is that true?
That is correct.
And how much are we anticipating then?
I don't have that number as I wasn't here when that was originally purchased this spring. But I know that that amount was reduced significantly from the previous year just because we were anticipating having extra salt.
And how much are we paying for rental of storage space for this salt?
I think it was $3 a ton.
Is that $3 a ton for no matter how long, or is that $3 a ton per month?
I believe that was just $3 a ton for the season.
Okay. Okay. I think that answers my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Kathy or Michelle, is there anybody else?
no, I don't see anyone.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, did Mike ever come back?
I don't see
I
him.
don't see them.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to the treasurer's report.
Okay, for the month of October, this is on the website. In the general fund, we have an ending fund balance of $2,957,449.98. We show a loss for the month, but we had we had our debt service. We had a lot of big payments go out. The pension was due, so it was a big month. Let's see. In open space, we have an ending fund balance of $2,453,672.37. I give a budget breakdown. For capital project reserve, we have an ending fund balance of $741,457.41. Again, I give a budget breakdown. Capital Road, month ending October 31st, we have an ending fund balance of $4,769,864.53. And I give a budget breakdown. For liquid fuels, month ending October 31st, we have an ending fund balance of $186,389.43. Again, with the budget breakdown. Sewer, ending fund balance, month end October 31st is $28,550.64. Escrows, $235,986.25.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have a question. We have 186,000 in liquid fuels. Are we going to be able to spend that by year end? Do we have to spend it by year end?
We don't have to.
No, you're allowed to carry it forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's, I believe, Mike, that's reserved for the road program. I don't know if we got the bill in for that yet. The contract for and chip.
That's fine. I mean, I didn't know if we would lose it if we didn't spend it. I wasn't
No.
sure.
No,
Okay.
it's in the bank.
Okay.
I got an email from the chief. He lost Wi-Fi at home. He's trying to reboot it. If not, he'll call in on the phone.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So next we have the manager's report, John.
Chairman, aside from the matters on the agenda, a couple of them which took up a fair amount of time, mostly with the audit of the pension plans. I worked with the staff on preparing the RFP for the auditing the architectural services firm last month, and we had a meeting earlier this week. I guess you could classify it as executive session, or two supervisors there met for the first time and had a general conversation. And that's about it. There's a fair amount of time last month spent on the pension plan. It's
Okay.
quite a
Thank
fair
you.
amount of work.
Okay, great. And then it leads us into the discussion on the budget.
So, as I said last meeting, the budget has some additional items in it. No tax increase. I prepared a 3-year budget, which shows an increasing fund balance every year. No tax increase throughout the period. It addresses a considerable number of the needs. There's a pretty robust road program that can be better defined after the road program for next year is completed. It does establish an equipment fund. As we discussed earlier in the year, we will move to a modified accrual basis of accounting, and we will appreciate our road equipment going forward. I'm recommending that the board consider borrowing $500,000 to acquire some of the more expensive equipment. The budget does provide it at 3% interest. I believe we can get that significantly if the board wants to move forward with that and actually take proposals or do something else to negotiate sale. And finally, the budget provides an additional police officer to be funded half year. I would recommend you hold off on, if you want to talk about any of the police matters until the chief gets on, because he was much more knowledgeable about that matter than I am.
Okay, I do have some questions. One, I did notice that you started an equipment fund.
Yes,
And in the past, we would have those expenses expensed in the different departments, public safety or public works,
that's correct.
which is most of the equipment. So when you break it out, and that's fine, I think that the expense, I mean, the depreciation portion of any of those expenses needs to go back into a line item in that department.
We can do that.
So if it's a 5-year property that goes back in, a 39-year property goes, every
Yeah.
39 times. So that will give you a better understanding of what the actual cost is for that department.
That would
Now,
be, Mike, that would be an interfund transfer, depreciation from the general fund into the equipment fund. We can do it that way.
no, I'm not worried about that. That's a separate fund. But I want
Right.
people to see what each department is costing the township. So you have to put in something in the actual financial statement of each department. So
Yes.
so that's why I was saying that, I mean, in the past, we did it because it was cash basis. We just, if you bought a car, then the whole amount went in that year.
Yes,
In this case, if it's longer life projects, then you would have to do the depreciation part in that department so that people get a true understanding of what the actual cost is to run that
Right.
department.
we can,
Okay.
that can be done. Yes.
Okay. So, and then you mentioned borrowing money, $500,000. Based on what I see at an $8.6 million fund balance, I really can't see why we'd go out and borrow money. We can easily handle these expenses, and some are needs, some are hard needs, and some are less hard needs. And I think that's up for discussion of what's actually needed. And because you have things like the trailer for the public works, and that was discussed last year or the year before, and it was determined that since it would only be used a few times a year, renting was definitely the way to go. And same thing with the equipment that you're renting, because if you're not using it on a more frequent basis, let's say twice a month, maybe it might pay off. I don't know. You have to do the math, but things like that, I think, need to be discussed again. And instead of having it be a want, have it make sense financially, because it is other people's money.
On the borrowing, I looked at it from just the general fund basis, not the township. You have a fair amount of cash. But you have a fair amount of unknowns in a relatively near term. We still don't know how much the road program is going to cost. You are most likely going to construct the public safety building, and you don't know how much that's going to cost. And there's a fair chance that there's going to be another shutdown in the near future. While we weathered this one exceptionally well, it's still an unknown. So I would prefer that, because you could probably get, this is I'm a conservative guy, and I very rarely make this kind of statement, but the money is relatively cheap. I believe you could get this amount of money for less than 1%. Total cost over a 5-year period would be $11,000, but it provides you with an opportunity of reserving your capital for another need when you most likely would need it in the year 22 or 23. So it's a conservative way of budgeting, and I believe you're at a point where, because the revenue is so inexpensive, that I believe it's something to have a conversation on. If you were paying 6 or 7%, I wouldn't recommend you even have that conversation.
Well, I mean, but there's another issue at stake here. The more money somebody has to spend, they tend to spend it, especially when it's not theirs. So that's an issue. The other issue is, in government, the best practice is to have like a 6.7%, let's say, rainy day fund. We're over 50%. So we're a little high now. I mean, actually, taxpayers should be a little disturbed that we have that much cash sitting there, not being utilized. But I agree. I'm a conservative person. I like to have a bigger rainy day fund in a few months. But again, the more money government ends up having, or anybody has that's not theirs, they will find ways to spend it. And I think it's dangerous. I know it's cheap. I understand that, and I agree with that. I just fear what people once become needs to people when they have that money disposed ability for them to spend.
Right. Listen, I agree with you, Mike, except that you're still facing these issues in the near term that could cost a lot of money. There is, there's a real big need to make an investment into the road system. You have some money set aside. You have a report that's showing what you have set aside is probably a quarter of what you need to invest in your road network.
Well, I think when we did the 5-year road program, I think it came out to $10 million. Yes,
It was over 20. It was over 20 million. And you have 5 million, roughly $5 million in the bank. You're going to need some money. You're going to need some money to make that investment. The Button Road Bridge investment cost is probably going to be anywhere between 800 and 1.2 million dollars.
That's correct. We did that.
That money was, I don't believe that was even considered in the road program in terms of that level of investment.
I have to ask Brian. I haven't looked at it for a while. Is Brian online?
Yes, I'll unmute him.
Hey, Brian.
He's still muted. Oh, there he goes.
Yes, I'm here.
Do you remember what we had in on the road program as cost for Buttonwood?
Well, the Buttonwood Bridge has been transferred from Arrow. You guys have awarded a contract to McMahon, so the bridge style and that is being worked on with McMahon now. So,
do you remember what it was in our road program? What you allocated for that?
We were looking at about 250 to 500 because we were looking at a GRS style bridge.
Right. Okay.
So,
all right.
Whether different style bridge could be different costs, different. There's too many variables at this point. I can't.
Okay.
Well, but Brian, didn't you have additional costs for extending the driveway to meet up with the existing driveway?
Which driveway are you talking about, Sarah?
Buttonwood.
The road itself.
The road itself, yeah. So you're all told you were probably 650 to 800.
Yeah. Okay. Somewhere around $1 million.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So you're probably approaching $1 million now with a couple years later.
Correct. Yes. Well, that's just my thoughts. My thoughts is we have the money to at least take us for the next, I would say 4 years in our road program. Based on what the budget is for road has been $1 million and we haven't been spending it. So I think we have at least 200,000 out of that per year to put towards a road program, plus the 4.7 million. And I guess we have, of course, almost $3 million in general fund. I understand your position that the money is cheap. Again, I just fear the spending.
Right, I understand.
So that's only my opinion. So it doesn't really matter. But the other thing I had a question about, I noticed that you moved into the equipment fund, but I've also noticed that, and I mean, again, there could be reasons for this, and I would like to hear them. But public safety is it was like 30% of revenue in 2020 on the budget, and 21 it goes up 7% to 34%. 22 it goes up 8% to 35%. And 23, it goes up 6% to 36% of revenue. So that department alone is increasing on percentage of revenue.
Right.
And
I'm
sure Public Works is doing the same thing.
Right. Part of the reason for that, your analysis, is that a new officer. And the other part is, I believe the police department gets a larger percentage increase by contract than all the other employees in the township in these 2 years. I think that's right, but I know they did. I don't know if it's 3% in the next 2 years or 4% a year.
I think there's a 4 in there somewhere.
There's a 4 in there somewhere. So they get a higher percentage increase than the rest of the staff.
That's correct.
And
Sarah, what'd you say?
no, it's okay. Thanks.
But it's like that, when you're talking the budget's $200,000, so that's a fair number there. And then the other officer with the benefits and, some training stuff.
Pension and everything else. Yeah.
That's the reason.
Okay, so depreciation. What else do I have? Oh, okay, I do have a question. Okay, so secretary, I noticed
Yes.
we had budgeted 61,000 for 2020.
Right.
And with an action, and then the forecast is 78,000 for 2020. And then 21, you're adding in a part-timer.
Right.
At 20 grand. Okay, my question is why?
All right. On the salary, all the employees, with the exception of police, because everybody gets a 3% raise.
Why 3%? Right.
3%.
Yeah, I saw that.
All right. For the secretary and the treasurer, there are two expenses budgeted next year that were not budgeted historically. One is overtime, and the second is the payment of accrual time off that was not taken, but paid for.
In all departments, I did that.
Yeah, so what we're doing is really recognizing the potential for expense. It's budgeted high, you'll probably never expend it, but in the prior years, it was never recognized as a potential expense. So that's the reason why those numbers are high. I think when we get a little more into it, going forward, they'll probably come down once we get a better handle on the overtime. But more importantly, it's the time off payment. If you don't use all your vacation, the policy of the township has been, we'll pay you for some of it. So that's a payment that's not been recognized in the budget for those two positions going forward.
Okay, but the increase for the treasurer was going from part-time to full-time, I'm guessing?
No, that was done in prior, before I got here.
Was it?
Listen, I'll back away from that question. I don't know the particulars in that
I've been
position.
full-time since probably a month after I started there, Mike.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
No problem. And my other question, just reading through your stuff, I saw that it says that the solar system that we have on the township building creates 2,000 kilowatt hours a month.
I believe that's correct.
Do you know what size array that is?
How would you want me to define it? I don't know how to define it.
The number of watts, the watt size.
I have to ask somebody, Mike. That's the number that's not in my head. Sorry.
Just for me looking on the roof, it seems like that's awfully high, the 2,000.
I took it from a bill from Pico. I took the difference between A and B, and that's the number that came up. And it was in a very sunny month, so it could have been a high number.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I have a 10K system, and I generate about 1,000 kilowatt hours a month on average.
Okay. All right.
My highest would probably be maybe in the best month, and it wouldn't be necessarily summer. It would be a cooler month with the long daylight.
Mm-hmm.
Would maybe get to 13 kilowatt hours. And
Right.
For some reason, I think the system on the township may only be like a 5,000 or 6,000 kilowatt system.
All right. I'll check into that, Mike, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, just to get it,
Yeah.
so that you're
I'm
not
sorry.
saying the wrong things. Okay.
Right.
So now we have to open up for discussion. Anybody have questions out there?
I don't see anybody's hands up.
Yeah, John Eldridge
Oh,
has it.
John Eldridge. Oop. John, you gotta, all right, I'll leave it alone. I think I keep muting you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I was further on this borrowing. What we've done, I think, is move some operating expenses into a capital account and then borrow money against them, which is sort of a dangerous practice in my mind. And generally, it's hard to borrow money for operating expenses. Now, the computers and the minor mics, I don't think you even depreciate them. Really should be operating expenses. And if you can't afford them, you raise your taxes. And if you, as a preliminary to a big project like a building, when you get to it and you know what it is, you borrow the money as a mortgage or whatever you want to do, and go forward. But to say we're doing this to reserve money for something that may happen if we need it at some time in the future, it complicates the county, it costs money, and you got to spend time setting up the whole thing. Oh, that's a further opinion on that.
Thanks, John.
That's all.
Anybody else,
Thank-
Kathy?
I don't see anybody.
Okay.
Let me go to the right, see if anyone's waving at me. No, I don't see anybody with their hands up.
Okay, so, so now what's that?
Is Bernie going to make this motion or am I?
Bernie,
Yeah, well, that's the next one, motion to adopt the preliminary budget.
I make a motion to adopt the preliminary 2021 to 2023 budget.
I'll second the motion.
You can
Okay,
connect.
I will go against that because of the $2 million borrowing that's in there.
So that's a 2-to-1 vote. Is that what
That's a
you're saying?
2-to-1 vote, correct?
Excuse me.
Want it called first? Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay.
All right. So next we
I will make
have,
a motion. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
well, you already made the motion, didn't you?
Getting ready to make the next one.
Oh, on the Helms request?
No,
No.
authorized.
The motion authorized advertisement of the
Oh, okay,
2021
that's not on mine. Okay, that's fine.
preliminary budget.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any questions, comments from anybody?
I don't see anything.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Okay,
Excuse me, Mike, I have to step away from the meeting for a minute.
no problem. Next, we have a discussion on the Helms request to construct a home on Lot 1B.
Joe McGrory, do you have this? Or do we need to wait for John to come back?
I guess
You're
we'll
gonna
wait
have to wait for John. I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. Why don't we skip over this and come back after we
Okay.
talk about 670 Bertrand Road?
No problem. Okay, we have a discussion on 670 Birchland Road. Is that also John?
No, that's the
Um,
historic commission, and some members are here. So,
Okay.
Peter, do you want to take it, or Carl? Peter, you'd be a good guy.
Somebody has to unmute Peter.
I unmuted.
Okay.
I'm unmuted, but I would ask Carl, I was not at the meeting. I'm aware of what happened, but I would ask Carl to speak on the subject since he was there.
Does Carl know how to put his hand up? Because I'm not seeing. There. Thank you. I couldn't find you.
Can't find Carl?
No, I found him.
Oh, okay.
Mike,
He's
isn't
hard
that
to-
a funny thing to hear that you can't find me? The Historic Commission essentially discussed the application of Mr. Risbin. The commission discussed the facade of the building, and as long as he is generally in keeping with what was presented in the form of a rough drawing that illustrates divided light windows and doors on the front of the building, the Historic Commission was generally okay with moving forward. That's the feel of it. That's what we've come to. He hasn't given us any more information than a drawing, but that was the gist of our meeting and the understanding. So assuming that there is not some large discrepancy or movement away from what he presented in that drawing, we're okay.
Okay, great.
And I would just add that we would request that before any construction is done, that the proposed details be provided to us so that we can affirm that they are in keeping with the discussions that were approved.
That
And
makes
that-
sense.
And that arrangement was made, the Historic Commission decided to have Peter and I play tip of the spear on that and be the interaction rather than having to go through the whole, the whole formal process with the commission. Just Peter and I, due to our experience, would just be able to deal with that with the property owner. So
Okay.
when he submits something or there's an issue, just reach out to us and we can deal with it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
We need Brian Kulikowski or Scott to talk to the trail easement. It's also on our agenda.
I signed it. I signed the trail easement. I had it reviewed by my counsel, and we are good with it.
And BK, are we good with it?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
all you need is a motion to approve the trail easement.
But I just wanted to hear from Brian, but he's waving.
Yes, Sarah, this is Brian. I have reviewed the plans. I have reviewed the exhibit plan, the land development plan, and the legal description for the trail easement. And I have approved the documentation for the trail easement. It was provided to Joe's office. Joe's office did prepare a easement agreement for the township, which is on your agenda for acceptance tonight.
Okay. I will make the motion to accept the trail easement for 670 Birch Run Road project.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any comments or questions?
I don't see anything.
No?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Where
I'm
was
also-
that on the,
I'm also going to need a motion to approve the facade exhibit.
Yep,
that
that's
was
next,
submitted by the
but
applicant.
I do want to know, Brian said something about, is there a plan approval that needs to happen also? That's not
No.
on today's agenda.
No, that was already approved. These are just conditions that were approved previously.
Okay,
Yeah, you guys, Sarah, the board approved his plan conditionally back, I believe it was either December or January. And we're just trying to address all the conditions of approval so he can get to recording.
okay. I make the motion to approve the facade exhibit with the condition that the facade exhibit was approved by the Historic Commission. Does that really mean will be? But, okay, I'm making that motion according to what this document says and also the understanding that Carl and Peter will be involved in any approval.
I'll second the motion.
okay, any comments or questions?
I don't see anything.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Now, Sarah, you're doing these motions, but I don't see it on the agenda at all.
It's number,
Okay,
no.
never mind. I have a page of the motions. I didn't see that.
okay. Scott, does that do what you need?
What's that? Oh, there's John. Okay.
Sorry, wait, it's a question.
Scott's back.
We're going to go back to the discussion of the Helms request for a house on lot 1B.
We
Okay.
saved it for you, Major.
You're familiar with that, correct?
You're talking to me, Mike?
Yes, John, sorry.
Yes. Apparently several years ago, the matter was litigated. The court found in the favor of the township. The Helms recently submitted correspondence to the board asking them to reconsider the matter so they could build a second home on the lot. So I think the matter is the degree of comfort the board feels with the court decision and whether or not they want to, or whether or not they want to permit the Helms to build a second house on the property.
Okay, so at this point, the court said that they can't build a house on this property, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and this is an eased property, I take it?
Yes.
It's
And
conservation.
conservation easement, right? So who are we to override a conservation easement?
Or a previous court decision.
Well,
I think we-
my question comes up to all the other properties that are conservation easements, so we can just override all of them?
Yeah, exactly, Mike. Thank you.
No, I mean, I'm asking the question, can we? The board has that power?
No.
Joe,
It
you
depends
there?
on how the easement's worded.
Well, that's very
Clearly.
scary, because if I think properly, I'd be guessing that when you buy a property that has a conservation easement or any easement, you're paying less per acre for that property. And then to turn around and get it cheap and then build on it seems, it really shouldn't be something that can be done without paying back the difference in price.
Well, I haven't had a township reverse a conservation easement, and I've been at it for 37 years.
Okay,
We have a comment.
okay, who we got?
You're not muted.
Hi, this is Jim Helm.
Yeah, Jim.
All right, so it seems to me like the subject's not quite queued up properly. Litigation was not involving the Helms. It was involving a builder and the township.
Okay,
That property,
a previous owner of the property.
previous owner of the property, just the way you said it, Mike, wasn't quite right. And no, it's not in the property file. So no, it wasn't found upon diligence. And no, you didn't mention that there is a conservation agreement between ourselves and the township, which we signed twice. It was redone in 2016, which grants the ability to build one house on Lot 1B. The litigation we weren't familiar with at all. We started thinking about this, and one of our neighbors mentioned there was a building permit that wasn't allowed. So this isn't as you just represented it, Mike.
Okay,
It wasn't
all right.
well known. It wasn't known at all. It also wasn't in the property file, and it also is not in the agreement that we have signed with the township twice.
So wait a minute, so you're saying that this is not on the title?
No.
Well,
Jim,
the-
how did you sign an agreement with the township? How did that even happen that you did that twice? Was it about the sewage issue, the stormwater issue with?
It was initially, and then it was redone in 2016, 17, as adjustments were made to the conservation easement, to the trail markings and other things.
So,
let me restate what we're requesting. We're requesting you consider a change on the use of the property, allow a use of the property that's granted under our agreement, and you make a decision of what's right for today, not maybe what a board decided a decade ago. What we own is a farm in the middle of a subdivision. And what we've learned about the best use of this property is livestock doesn't go well with kids. Livestock doesn't go well when there's hundreds of houses all about us. And that wasn't there a decade ago. So when we look at the possible uses and the uses that are granted in our conservation document, it grants us the right to build one house. Mike, that's what we thought we bought when we bought the property. It wasn't bought cheap, not at all. So that's what we thought we bought. That's what the agreement says. And then we learned of a litigation after the fact. And the litigation had to do with the builder and what they knew and didn't know. And we're just asking you not to reconsider litigation. We're asking you to validate the agreement that we have between ourselves and the township is accurate, and it's good for the time. And if you're saying, hey, I never heard of us doing that, Joe just said that, I would draw your attention to a precedent. In fact, it was the last agenda item. This is a very analogous situation. That property was covered under a legal agreement. It was said exactly what could happen with that property. And in fact, the owner of that property signed a restrictive covenant not but a year ago that said he would accept all those. And then within months, the Board of Supervisors changed that, granted the building of 4 units on that property where none were allowed before. You set a precedence to change what was a legal agreement, a conservation plan. You already did it. You just did it with 670 Birch Run. So I know you can do it. The question is, I'm not asking you to make a change. I'm just asking you to honor the agreement you have between the Helms and West Vincent.
Okay, hey, Joe, are you there? Have you reviewed that agreement?
I haven't seen anything on this. I'm going to have to read
Yeah, I
all
think-
the agreement, and I'm going to have to figure out what this litigation is. Whatever information, I'm speaking to the manager now, whatever information you have on this, can you get it to me, including the litigation? So I can opine as to what's being done or whether it can be done or how it can be done.
Yes. I'll get it to you tomorrow.
Okay, excellent.
Jim Helm, the farmstead that you guys bought is the conservation parcel for that South Down subdivision. Is that right?
Yes, I guess that's the right wording. Go ahead.
So the density of the whole subdivision was based on only having your home there, not a second building. If the second building had been permitted, there would have been one fewer building in the subdivision. I believe that's how it works. So I think, however it happened, somebody said you had the ability to do a building. That might have been if Southdown hadn't built out completely.
Sarah, just a comment. I mean, I think there are a lot of people on this call that have a lot of experience, more than I, in development plans and developments. You know how it's calculated. You know the variables of slopes and wetlands and how difficult that is. The math in the development plan, I couldn't track. That was a long time ago, 15 years ago. It was calculated somewhere at 21 and there's 20. I don't know, Sarah. We're not asking the township to relitigate. We're not asking the township to do anything except ignore the past. Do what you did with Scott Risbin and the 670 Birch Run bill. You made a separate new decision, a decision that was right for the time. There's an 8-acre lot. We have an agreement with you that says we can build on it. And building is the best thing to do. It increases taxable values and increases our neighbors' values. The alternatives, which are granted, are a lot worse. Alternatives like building a solar farm, wind farm, even just livestock. Our neighbors don't tolerate very well, and we don't tolerate them being around our livestock. They get in the fields, they touch electric fences. This whole idea of a farm in the middle of a development, we've learned is a bad idea. This isn't an idea for the future. We're just asking the township supervisors to make the decision for the future.
Well, Joe, I mean, I'm in agreement, except for if it is a conservation easement, not allowing a building, then we have properties all over our township like that. And if we can reverse that, that's going to cause some major problems if we have the power to do so, which I'm hoping we don't. But in your case, we may, based on what you're telling me about an agreement you have with the township that allows this building.
So I guess we just refer this to council and put it on the agenda for after we've had a chance to review it.
Yeah, and I'd like to know a little bit more about the Risbin thing too. If that was just a use change, if that was a single use versus a multi-use change, but not a conservation or building on a property.
No, it was part of the Pankin settlement agreement, and he came and asked for, instead of having it be a barn, he would like to put 4 units of housing there.
Right, but it's within inside the barn. It was not vacant land that was going to get a building. Yeah, so it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
There's a question on the floor.
Okay.
You're not muted.
Okay, I assume you're talking to me. I don't know anything about this property or anything about it, but I used to work for a land trust. conservation easements are extremely difficult to terminate. You have to use eminent domain, I believe, to terminate a conservation easement. So when you do your research, be careful to make sure your terminology, there's PDRs, purchases of development rights, TDRs, transfers of development rights, there's conservation easements, which, as I say, it's extremely expensive and difficult to terminate. So look into that. And as far as, if I understood correctly, maybe I didn't understand, but it sounded as if the property was bought without knowing that a conservation easement was on it. If that's the case, the title search people should be
Held liable, yes.
held liable. Yeah.
Let me just, can I, if I may correct that? We know that there's we have the agreement right in front of us. The agreement between us is for 2 conservation lots, each conservation lot having a single subdivided residential parcel containing no more than 1 single family unit. That's the agreement we have with you.
Right. And let me also add, I meant to say, just because something has a conservation easement on it doesn't mean you can't build on it, but it has to be included in the easement at the time of the recording. You can reserve a building lot. You can reserve 10 building lots if the property is big enough, but you can't then add more building lots later. And sometimes the location of the building lot is set when the easement is signed. Sometimes it's called a floating building site, where it can be put anywhere with the approval of the land trust or the government entity to whom the easement was donated. I guess
that sounds right. Yeah.
Julia has her
Yeah,
hand.
excuse me. So you had just said it's 2 separately deeded lots and they each have their own, they're each conserved separately, aren't they?
That's correct.
Then why can't you build on the one lot? I mean, it's not one, I'm looking at it in public records right now. You never reverse this. They're 2 separate lots. You could turn around and you could sell that lot to whoever you wanted to.
Yes.
It could build a house is what you're saying, because that's the way that the conservation easement is written. This is not one 18-acre lot, one 18-acre parcel. This is an 8.26 acres and 10 acres. That's the way I'm looking at it. And I'm a realtor. So if I was selling it, that's the way I'd be looking at it. And I'm actually in public records, it actually doesn't say that the lot is under Act 319 or anything. It does say that the house is the 10 acres. So I think you need to go back to your original, to your deed and look at that again, because the way that it looks to me is that you have 2 totally separate lots. You never reverse the subdivision. It's not 18 acres. They're separate. So you should be able to do whatever you want with that 8.26 acres that you have that's on the other side of the street. That's the way I'm looking at it.
Yep.
Well, especially if it allows a property on it.
Yeah, then you need to go back and look at that again. I think I don't know, like from the realtor perspective, I don't know that you ever really needed to ask for anybody to change anything if that's the way that it was actually written.
Well, Julia, I appreciate your comments, which is why we need to have our solicitor look at it, because there was the previous suit. If we made an agreement with the Helms that changed whatever previous restrictions, we need to understand the dynamics from when the Cook hearing went through about them wanting to build on it and they were turned down. So we need to let our solicitor research this and tell us what the situation is. So I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, of course, but that's what it would seem like to me.
John Granger,
Julia-
do we have a copy of the conservation easement? And more importantly, do we even know the name of the lawsuit or the docket number of the lawsuit?
I believe we have everything.
Okay.
And Julia, it's nice to see you without a mask.
Okay, so John, you'll give that to Joe so he can.
Yes, I
review it.
will. First thing in the morning.
John will get back to you as soon as Joe gets back to him.
Thanks for the consideration.
We're going to
Sure,
put
no
this
problem.
we're putting this on the December agenda for further discussion.
Well,
Yeah.
hopefully it won't have to go on a agenda item. Hopefully he has the build right to do it. depending what Joe finds. If Joe finds something that we have to discuss, then we'll put it back on the agenda.
Okay.
All right, so where are we? We did the Risbon.
Number 10.
Okay, the resolution 21-2020.
Okay, the next two items are the result of the audit of the township's pension plans. As you can imagine, the selection of professionals to provide services to pension plans has been less than good over the decades across the state. State has issued regulations that indicate that each municipality must comply with these regulations in terms of the process in which to retain consultants for pension plan management. So because the township did not have any of these standards, we recommend that the board adopt a resolution setting forth the standards which are identical to state standards. So that anytime you need to go and retain a professional consultant, you're doing it in accordance with the state regulations and everybody stays out of trouble.
Okay, sounds good.
I
Somebody
make
want to make that motion?
I'm making the motion to approve Resolution 21-2020, establish written procedures to select pension plan professional services.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments or questions?
I don't see
Kathy, Michelle?
No, I don't see anything.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next we have the appointment of the township manager as chief administrative officer for the pension plan.
Can I explain this because it's a little complex here, please? Each pension plan must have a plan administrator required by the state law. The records of the township indicate that Jim Wendelglass is the plan administrator. That's an audit finding because Minister Wendelglass is since departed with the township. In order to rectify the situation so you're not in the same position going forward, recommend you appoint the township manager as a plan administrator. You're appointing a position, not the individual, so it doesn't matter who's holding that position. They will always be, you will always have a plan administrator.
Okay, excellent. Okay, Sarah, you're gonna make that motion?
Yes, make the motion to approve Resolution 22-2020, appoint the township manager as the chief administrative officer for pension plan.
And I'll second the motion.
Any comments or questions?
I don't see anything.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And next,
Oh, wait. Brian has his hand up.
okay, Brian. Did you unmute him?
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Okay, you need to be a little bit slower, Mike, so that everybody gets recognized. Two things here. One is, if the township manager has this new, as the chief administrative officer, does that mean that will then be part of the requirements for future township managers as we hire them, et cetera? And I'm not chasing you out, John, at all.
Yeah, I understand. No, it is a typical thing that managers do. It's essentially signing some documents. Everything that's forwarded to the state with respect to the pension plan is executed by the chief administrative officer. There's very little additional work that's done. I've done it since I've been here, and it's just something that is typical of the position of township manager. They are also the plan administrator.
Okay, that answers that. Thank you very much. The second question I've got is, we've got a number of resolutions here, and we have motions passed to approve them, and it sounds like they're being passed based on whatever the topic of the resolution is, but there's no detailed mention. The resolutions are not read out to the members attending the meeting. And I think that's been done in certain other cases in the past. I can't put my finger on it. But my question is, these various resolutions that are going to come up or proposed ordinances that are going to come up at a meeting, is there some reason why they aren't published with the meeting notice or published somewhere on the township's website so that people can review them if they care to before the meeting occurs and has a lot better idea of actually is what is being approved as opposed to a top line description, which sometimes when you read down the details, you go, holy crap, that doesn't sound good. Is there
We can do
some
that.
reason why these resolutions can't be, posted with a meeting notice going forward?
Yeah, that's not a problem. We'll do it.
Yeah, it's a great
Okay,
idea.
thank you.
Brian. Okay, next. Authorize administration to advertise an RFP for plan administrator and plan activity.
This will be for the non-uniform plan, the police pension plan. The plan administrator it's handled by the Pennsylvania Municipal Retirement System, and they are excellent in managing the plan. The non-uniformed employees plan is a defined contribution plan, and it is a little more difficult to manage. The current plan administrator is less than good. The number of findings that the pension auditor illustrated could have been resolved had the pension plan administrator and actuary, but I don't believe you have an actuary, would have been involved and could have provided guidance. They did not do that. And I think that's a clear deficit for the township, but also the employees. And I think doing an RFP provides an opportunity to have the township look at what the market can provide and make a selection based on that.
Okay, sounds good. Somebody want to make
So-
that motion?
I'm on a roll. I make a motion to authorize advertisement of the RFP for the plan.
Brian
For
has
a
his hand
plan.
up. Sorry.
Huh?
Brian has his hand up.
Well, okay, he can ask the question after the motion.
Okay, just.
Thank
Second.
you. For plan administrator and plan actuary.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, now Brian can speak.
You need to unmute him.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Actually, I've got to do it at this end. I get an announcement every time to hit it. So that, and I hit *9 so that you know it's coming, and then Mike doesn't get ahead of everything.
That's why I tried to chime in. Sorry.
Okay. Do we have some idea of what the cost of this is going to be?
Cost of the advertisement or the pension plan administrator's work?
For the plan administrator and actuary.
They're both relatively minor. I think they're both less than $5,000 each. The pension plan pays those costs because the work is related to the pension plan. But the cost, when the RFP is issued, the requirements that the board passed earlier have in there a requirement of what their fee is. So you know what the fee is before you retain the individual.
Okay, that helps me on cost. This RFP, who developed it? What are the requirements in it? Where were they pulled from? Et cetera.
I will post the prior resolution that established the procedures on the website tomorrow, and that'll tell you everything you need to know because that's what the RFP is going to be.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir. Bye.
All right.
John, who is our administrator at this time?
Michelle, you want to answer that question? I can never remember her name.
PA Retirement Solutions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have an appointment to the Special Fire Police.
I don't think we voted on that.
Oh, we did? Oh, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to happily make the motion to appoint Margaret R. Pearson Robinson as a special fire police member.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments or questions?
Brian.
Okay, Brian?
Brian, you're not muted. Nope,
Now
now
you
you
are.
are. Hang on.
Maybe you should leave Brian unmiked.
I keep pressing ask to unmute. He's not. There we go. Go ahead.
There we go. Okay. What is the special fire police member?
We did another one of these a couple of months ago, Brian. These are people to work with the fire company as traffic control, things like that. So we appoint them. We've done it in the past.
So in other words, the fire company needs these people. They're fire police.
That's
and
correct.
they need to be appointed by the township. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Do we pay them, or is it we mostly cover the insurance for them somehow, some way?
Covered under the township workers' compensation program. If they are paid, the fire company pays them. The township does not.
Okay. So these show up periodically, or is it that they can, let's see, I'm going to say retire, decide not to be a special fire police member, and then we need to appoint a new one at that point?
They let us know they have volunteers who they'd like us to appoint.
Yeah. Typically, I don't know much about the fire company and how they, what their level of participation with the fire police are. However, historically, this is a function that goes begging for people to volunteer to serve. And they're typically retired individuals who have time, because when they're called out for a fire, after the fire company goes home, they are generally still there on the scene. They also manage traffic control for accidents, so they're out for a long period of time.
Thank you very much, John, for that additional information. I really appreciate it, and I also have much more of an appreciation for the position too.
All right, thanks, Brian. The next on, did we vote on that one? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next we have a proposal for garage doors at the maintenance building at Brid Co-Ed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mike Hoga received proposals from at least one company, maybe a couple more. I haven't. Mike, you want to answer that? How many proposals you got?
Currently, there's only one in.
All right. So we've been searching for several months to get proposals from companies to install the garage doors at the maintenance building at Brid Co-Ed. There's two small doors and one large door. And I don't have the manager's report in front of you, but I think the cost was about $50,000. Is that correct?
15.5 or something, somewhere around there.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I don't have it in front of me.
And it's not for the man doors, that we will address the man doors individually and board up the windows over the winter time. But this is work that we cannot do. The doors would be, slightly insulated. We're going for the lower insulation rather than higher, because there won't be any heat in the building. There'll be some windows in the doors, but windows will be high, just to let in some light. And there will be automatic door openers, because doors are relatively large to move. This would be the.
Okay.
We really need to do something to secure this building pretty soon.
Yes, there are still people going in that building.
Yeah.
Even
Right.
today, as I was over there, they had the fire extinguishers outside, and without the doors, we can't secure it.
Agreed. Mike, you weren't able to find anybody else to do these doors, so you only have the one bid?
We only have one now. We initially just got a quote just for more of a ballpark as to what we're
Right.
going to pay. I can certainly work on getting more.
So how do you want to handle it? And just in case Mike gets one cheaper, that's good, if not better.
Well, I
Do we
would
just-
suggest you approve, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I want to make a motion to authorize the administration to purchase doors to install at a price not to exceed the.
$15,500.
If you get lower, then we can go ahead with that.
Right, I
And I'll
agree.
report back to the board what we ever do.
Okay, no problem. All right, Sarah, you want to do that one, or Bernie?
Sure, I'll make that motion, what John said.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Any questions from Brian out there? Is there questions? Kathy, Michelle, any questions out there? Oh,
Can you
Kathy's
hear me?
muted.
Sorry, I was muted. I don't,
So is Kathy.
Can you hear?
Go ahead. Hear you.
go ahead, Brian.
Okay. I have no objection to this. It sounds like a great idea. You got to close it up. Are we bound? We've got, I think, two potential issues. I think you're over the, I think, approximately 10,000 limit where you need 3 telephone bids. And the other thing is you may be bouncing against, with the Wuhan virus, everything, the supply chains have gone to heck in a handbasket. And things have dragged out no end. We might be bouncing up against that. You know, I hate to go and say this, you may end up just boarding them up for the winter, you know, on a temporary basis. I don't like it. You know, I agree we should have doors and everything like that, but you could have a problem there with, you're really supposed to have 2-3 telephone bids,
Right.
I believe, and document them.
Yes,
And
we'll
then
do.
the other one is the supply issue.
Yeah,
well,
we'll
Mike-
check on both. Right.
Yeah, Mike can get 3
Yes.
quotes, even if they can't deliver, at least we get the quotes.
And the quote that we do have, they were 6 to 8 weeks out, I think. So they
Okay.
are still, you know, they're still getting materials in, but they're pretty busy. They're either very busy or they are having trouble getting materials. But
Correct. Okay.
Just so we're covered. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions out there? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next on the list, we have the proposal from Oz Properties for snow plowing.
Mr. Chairman, this work was bid out twice with nobody interested. And this was the firm that did it last year, and the prices are the same as last year.
Yep. Okay. Sarah, Bernie?
Yeah, I make the motion to accept the proposal from Oz Properties for snow plowing of Township Road.
I'll second the motion.
Any questions or comments? Yeah.
Brian, unless his hand was up from
I
last.
think I'm here. I think I'm here now.
Yeah,
Correct?
Okay, Brian?
You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. The thing, you know, this occurred to me. We're bumping up against the thing that we only need these people on a demand basis. And most people are said, you know, I want you all, you know, winter long, so it makes them easier for them to plan. One of the thoughts, you know, I know Erica had said she had talked to all the other local townships. They all have the same problems. The thought occurred to me, you know, what other facilities might have the same issue where we normally can cover our snow plowing, but if we need somebody, we need to call, you know, get somebody in right now. And the thought occurred to me, local small airports, like the ones up at Limerick, Pottstown, Westchester, et cetera, they normally have to keep themselves plowed so the planes can come in even though it's snowing, et cetera. But there's times when we get a massive snow dump and they've got to call in people, et cetera. And the thought to me is, and I'm not suggesting it for this year, but why don't we talk to, you know, small airports, et cetera, and ask them, what do you do for when you can't handle your own snow removal and you've got to get somebody in there? Do you have some contracts that go with it, and what type of contracts they have? And it's just a suggestion going forward, not this year.
Thanks, Brian. Any other questions?
I don't see anything.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next on the list is discussion on a proposed event ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, this ordinance was prepared, I believe, primarily by the chief, who is absent right this minute. It is primarily to address a provision of services to public events. Police are required, and other public facilities, to manage traffic and provide emergency services by basis. It is a pretty, I've read it, I've not been here through the entire process, but I think it's something worth the board's attention, primarily because it provides a mechanism for the event planner to participate in the planning process with the police department. More importantly, it provides the opportunity for the police department to be reimbursed for expenses to provide a service to a third party that would normally not be covered under the general taxing body. You can link this to, like, building permits. Building permits, you get a permit. It's not covered under the general taxation for the township. You need that done, and you pay for the service. Here is, you want to have police and emergency services for your event, you should reimburse the township for those expenses. Would not cover birthday parties, Halloween parties, or weddings, or funeral events, but it's mostly for large events where traffic management is going to be an issue, and the police are involved in planning for that on a short term and a long term.
I agree with that, John, except for when I read through it, it said 50 or more people. That's a very small, I mean, that could be a family wedding at somebody's house. It could be a lot of events at the horse show grounds are that size.
Well, I think, I think there, the ordinance needs a little bit of work, clearly. It is not for a private homeowner event.
Well, no, it actually says private also in there. So, I mean, there's some things that need to be taken out of that before we could move on to approve something.
All right, yeah. Because the chief's not here, I would really recommend you defer any further conversation on this.
John, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, you're there, John. Or Mike, sorry.
Oh, he's on
Mike,
the phone.
Mike,
Okay.
John, hey, I apologize. I had to call back in on the phone. Technology, when it works, it's great. Yes, the ordinance, I propose that we have learned through the last two concerts that, we need some type of structure for promoters. And I'm not talking about just the concert. I'm talking about any of our large events. And this was basically put on the table to provide that structure and provide an A to Z type method of applying for and going through the steps to get the permit. And also to address all the public safety issues, including police, ambulance, fire if needed, fire police, and also zoning, and to make sure that the township and all those agencies get reimbursed for their services.
Yeah, and I understand that, but I mean, some of the things in there, private parties and 50 or more, 50 seems a little low on the number. The horse show would be hit a lot, I think, on this. Just the few events they had this year where they had the singers from some theater company doing it, would have to go through that process. I just think that might be a little much.
No, I agree, Mike. And this is just a place to start. And again, we don't want to make this difficult for anyone, but we want to get something in place to, to get that structure there, to get a permit at the end of the process. And again, this is just a starting, it's a way to begin the process, to discuss it and figure out what's best for the township and for our residents.
Right. Okay.
Somebody
And
else.
Mike,
Barbara.
still waiting.
Mike, I think
we're
Mike,
still
I think
waiting.
you did a.
Comment from Joe McGrory.
Mike, I think you did a really good job with this ordinance. I think it's all well thought out, well laid out, and if the concern is that you don't want to regulate the smaller gatherings like 50 people, then change that to 250 people. Because
Right.
it's only the really, really large ones that we're concerned about. And I think if you made that change, we'd cover what we're concerned about, and at the same time alleviate the board's fears of over-regulating.
Yeah, and also you have to get a little bit lighter on the private property part. Public property, I understand, but private gets a little questionable sometimes.
Well, I mean, technically the fairgrounds are private property.
Well,
The
good
horse
point.
show is private property.
Okay.
So there's, yeah, if
That's
it's
a
just
hard one to
public
separate,
property,
I
we can
got it.
regulate. Yeah, if it's just public property, we can control it ourselves before leasing it out to someone. It's
Right.
the private property that we have to really regulate.
And
Okay.
Mike, did you see that the application form that was provided to, I provided some comments that needs a section at the bottom for township use only that says, does this event meet the criteria of the ordinance? You know, does this apply? Yes, no. If so, then whatever information needs to be provided or whatever fee might be. But the first question is, after we review it, does the event ordinance even apply? So people can send it in and we can say, no, have a wonderful wedding, you know.
Well, I mean,
Well,
the
if
ordinance will be
specifically
on the
steps out-
website, so people could look themselves to find out if they fall under that ordinance or not.
Well, the ordinance as written specifically exempts out weddings.
Right.
So regardless
Brian
of the
Curry
size of
here.
the wedding, no permit.
Okay, Brian?
Could this be posted on the website so that the ordinary people can see it
Yeah.
besides you guys on the, in the administration and supervisors?
I
Yes.
think we could wait. We got formal comments back from Joe and the rest of us get a chance to look at that. But
Well, all I'm suggesting that it goes out earlier before it gets to the point of, well, this is the way it's written and we're going to approve it. To take input earlier on as opposed to at the late stage where you say, well, I'm sorry, we don't have time to go and change it again.
No, I agree with
Not-
Brian. It won't hurt anything to get comments from the public also, during the same time that we're putting in our 2 cents.
Hey, Brian, I'm gonna have to mute you because there were 2 other people in front of you with their hands up.
Fine, I'll try to go and work with you, no problem. Let's
Okay.
learn.
I'm not trying to be mean. So we'll have to go through the process, but I'm muting you. Barbara's hand is up first.
Okay, Barbara?
I asked her to unmute herself.
Oh,
Here we go.
There we go.
Barb Van Horn. As you know, I'm very involved in the horse show grounds. And it appears to me that this ordinance is pretty much directly pointed at the horse show grounds. I see eminent domain in a different form here. We deal very closely. Steve Bazil, I know he has his hand raised too. And he deals very closely with the police for all of our events. You know, we're trying to do things for the community. We're trying to raise money to keep ourselves alive. And this ordinance is outrageous.
whoa, whoa.
Big echo.
Okay, I turned my phone off now that I'm on with you guys. But I mean, I think it's ridiculous. We have dealt very closely with the township police. Every time we're having an event, Steve Bazil talks to Mike. And there's no need for this ordinance, and it's clearly directed towards the horse show. You're trying to shut us down.
I hope that's not true.
But it is true, Mike. Read the ordinance. We're the only property in West Vincent that has events of more than 50 people.
True.
Well, actually, Camp Hill Village, Kimberton Hills has large events. And the facility formerly known as the Vincent Baptist Church has larger events. This is not targeted at you. It is
That's
not
baloney,
targeted.
Sarah, and you know that.
Pardon me?
I'd like
thank you, Barbara.
you to unmute Steve Bazil, please, so he could speak to this.
Where is he?
I unmuted.
Yeah, hi, it's Steve Bazil here, and I can't tell you how outraged I am by this ordinance. And Chief, you know I like you, I respect you, I have a great working relationship with you. Asked me today, I felt like I was kicked in the nuts. I can't tell you how offensive I find it. We run everything by the township before we put any event on there. We clear it with you guys, make sure you're comfortable with whatever we're trying to do, and then we put it on. We are struggling, particularly in this COVID era, just to generate enough money to cover the operating expenses to keep the grounds open for the benefit of our entire community. And to have this shoved up our back end, I find particularly offensive. Let me tell you something else. Anyone that thinks that this only applies to very large events, read it, okay? I actually went to law school. I took it. This is an incredibly broad event. And I'll tell you what, if I have to file a writ of mandamus to have the art show shut down here and the various other smaller events shut down here, I'll be happy to do it. I will go to my grave before I see this ordinance passed in this township.
Steve, this
Okay,
has been
thank you,
in the
Steve.
works since last year. It was already in the works when I took office in January.
I am so furious when I saw this today. I have to tell you, people who I thought were my friends, I felt betrayed by when I saw this. And I knew exactly what it was targeting. Don't tell me it's not about the horse show grounds, okay? And you know what? I volunteer my time up there. I put all these events on up there, just trying to put on things for the community. We get great feedback. We generate money for it. And to have this stuck in my face at like 4:30 this afternoon, I'll tell you what, I'll lawyer up, and we can do this the hard way if you want to. I'll drag it through the fucking court of common pleas for the next 20 years. And you know what? Remember how it went when you tried to do eminent domain? I won't be so generous as to let each party bear its own attorney's fees. I'll make sure that Westminster Township is my leadership. This is absolutely unacceptable.
Okay.
Julia has her
Yeah,
hand.
did I make my position clear?
Yes, you did, Steve.
And you know what? I have to tell you, Mike, you in particular, I'm very disappointed. If you had an issue with anything we were doing up there, I would have expected the courtesy of a call from you. You and I have had a close working relationship for years on events up there. And I get this thrown in my face, and now I find out, frankly, I thought it was Sarah's doing. I find out it's yours. I can't tell you how betrayed I feel. Really.
Okay, Julia has her hand up.
Hi.
Okay, Julia.
Obviously that was a little heated. So, I just want to, since none of us, I don't think, or I haven't seen this actual ordinance and understand exactly what it includes, but my understanding is that the police department wants input on what's happening, when it's happening, so that they can schedule for having extra officers there if they need to. Are they going to need assistance with traffic? Is that what this is all about? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Chief, you're not muted.
Oh, this is basically, and first off, I want to say, Steve, I understand you're upset, and this is not, and I know you may disagree with me, this is not directed at you. We do have other events in the township. We have bicycle races, we have 5Ks, we have all kinds of events. And this was really just to put some structure in place to make sure that we cover all the bases. Because the one thing we have learned throughout the events is that there are a lot of bases that need to be covered. And that's really what this is all about. This is not to penalize anyone. This is not to target anyone. And honestly, I hope we can sit down and we can talk about all this, because that was my intentions from the very get-go. Is I wanted to sit down and talk about this with you guys before this was even put out on an agenda. That did not happen, and I apologize for that. It was put out today. I was not aware that this was going to be put on the agenda, and I would like to sit down and talk to you guys at some point. I don't want to penalize anyone. All we want to do is make a process, and a process that we can be fair to everyone. That's all I'm looking for. We've learned a lot. We have great relationship with you guys. We really do. And this is not, I seriously hope that we can continue with that great relationship. And this is not by any means to have any impact on that. And I do apologize if you're taking it that way, but that's not what our intentions were at all. Believe me. All we know is that we have a lot more events in the township, and I'm not just talking about it's the horse show. We're talking about everywhere. We have all kinds of events. And, again, bicycle ride, 5Ks, all kinds of things going on. And we want to make sure everybody has a process to come in and make sure that they secure their permits, and we make sure that everything is covered for those events and they're done safely. That's what this is all about.
2 more hands.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Do they know they're on?
I'm having a problem unmuting. There we
Mike,
go.
have we done anything up at the grounds without clearing it by you first?
No, Steve, you have not.
No. And I think you know how to get a hold of me pretty much 24/7, right?
I do.
So if there are other entities in the township that are having events, well, maybe you should target them, because I have to tell you, I took a look at this ordinance, and basically that shuts us down. And you know how much time I spend putting together all the different events we do up there that have been very positively received by the community, the fair, the trunk show, the movie night, all that stuff, that I now, frankly, if I have to go through all this hassle, I'm not going to do it. If I got to pay a fee, we barely make any money on those events to begin with. I understand you have a concern about controlling whatever other events are going on in the township. Maybe you and I should sit down, have lunch, and discuss this and figure out how we can address that. I have to tell you, the horse show grounds, I've made sure I am a big belt and suspenders guy. I've done everything. I clear it when it was Erica. I would talk to Erica. I talk to you. I talk to Tracy. We get all of our dots lined up, everything, all the T's are crossed to make sure we're doing whatever we need to keep the township happy, because we enjoy having a mutually beneficial relationship with you. I see this ordinance come by, and this is basically a big F you, Bazil. It's been a waste of your time. We're going to do whatever we want, tell you what you can do up at the horse show ground. And I have to tell you, I am freaking furious.
Steve, that was never my intentions, and I apologize. And I would love to take this offline and sit down and we can talk. I always
Great.
talk, and
Okay.
that's what I would like to do. I appreciate your friendship and the way that we have a great relationship over the years, and I don't want to jeopardize that. So I certainly would like to sit down and talk with you.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Michelle, anybody else?
Yes, Ed's next, then Barbara, then Maria.
I'm Ed Bacon, and I guess I get tagged as person in charge of property, along with Steve. I'm sorry I came to this late. I'm sorry I came in the middle of Steve's speech. I just got this afternoon too, and I questioned it, and it really, if it did apply to the horse show, is very troubling. And I was going to suggest that offline I speak with people. There's a lot of this that is not, just would not let the dog shows or horse shows continue. And my understanding or my guess is, this is the way we do it in East Nantmeal, is this came from some other township. And the language basically was tweaked a little bit to fit West Vincent, but maybe without really understanding the impact on some of the activities in the township. So I'd be glad to come in and speak with supervisors, township manager, Mike, anybody. To Mike's credit, he does get along very well with the horse show. He's helped us out a lot. And I was just wondering where this came from, because I thought we were working together very well.
Thanks, Ed. Anybody else? Michelle?
Yeah, Barbara. Hang on 1 minute. There we go.
Hi, everyone. This is Barb Mueller. I think I see where Chief is coming from. There's lots of events going on in the township, not only I'm in charge of a couple at the horse show grounds and on private property. So I would welcome the ordinance to be reviewed by everyone, and maybe tweaking things like the number of people. 50 is low, so if it's 100 people or whatever is deemed, when you need traffic control, however many people that kind of triggers, needing fire police for traffic control, maybe that's the number that you use for the ordinance. And I guess I'd also be worried about all the nonprofits in the area and what fees get attached to this then, you know, because whenever you ask for a permit, usually there's a fee attached. So that would be my concern. So that, you know, I'm with you, Chief, and I know, like, for instance, Chester County Day last year, you had a bike race, you had the Chester County Day hunt, and you had something else going on, and it was a crazy day that we all worked together, and that's what you do in small town America. But I think if the number of people was bumped up from 50, and if there was some clarification on what fees would be attached, I think people would be a little calmer. And I don't, you know, I don't see this as an attack straight at the horse show grounds, because I do things besides right there too. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Barb.
Okay, there's, Maria had her hand up, then put it down, and somebody else jumped in front of her. So I'm gonna put Maria, I'm gonna unmute her.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions. You know, Chief, have there been large events that haven't paid for, like, where you haven't been reimbursed? Or, like, I'm kind of trying to understand what started this, because I do know that there was a large reimbursement from the first concert event that the horse show had, and you guys got reimbursed. And I guess if we're not talking something like the Big Country Music Fest, and it's something like the French and Pick bike ride, or something small like a hunt or whatever, isn't that what our police department is there for? Like, do you get paid your salaries, you get paid your overtime, and then you get paid, like, and then you expect other people to reimburse for all these other things like that you're on duty for anyway? Because I seem to remember an event that I was running for the township, and I was actually told that the police were already tied up for something else, and they weren't going to be able to do, you know, to help us out. And you weren't there. So I'm kind of confused a little bit.
Hi, Maria. Yeah, it depends on what the size of the event is. If we have to bring in additional people, if we have to bring in patrol cars, patrolmen, then we have to, we have fees for that. So it's going to depend on basically what the event is. And that's how we determine, if obviously an event the size of like the concert, or something else like one of our 5Ks where we have to close roads down or something like that, then we bring people in. Yes, we have to get reimbursed for that. If it's a much smaller event, and there's an officer, available that's on duty that can just, slide by and help out, with maybe some traffic or something like that, we'll do that, of course. But, it depends on the event, it depends on the size of the event, and it depends on what's needed of us. So that's how we determine.
All right. So in the past, I guess my question is, other than the horse show, the Country Music Fest, where I know you got reimbursed, did you get reimbursed for other large events that you did have? Like, you said a 5K, or the bike race. Like I know that when French and Pick does their big bike race through, I think you guys do a lot of support. And you know what? You even support like the frog crossing on Birch Run Road. Like, what are we talking?
The large events, yes, we get reimbursed like at the horse show. There have been some private events where we've done traffic control and things like that. To me, that yes, we have gotten reimbursement. There is a fee schedule for an officer in a police car, to direct traffic or something like that. But the biggest event obviously has been the concert, and that's the biggest one that we've dealt with.
And you did get reimbursed, correct?
Yes, we did.
So is there really a problem? Because it sounds to me like you already have the mechanism to get reimbursed. So if it's all about getting reimbursed, this is a really onerous ordinance where, you want every sponsor's information. And, when you're talking about the horse show, that could be 100 different sponsors that may not want to give up all of their information. So like, where's the problem, I guess, is what the question is, because it sounds like you already have a good handle on handling this.
I think what we're trying to do here, it was trying to get structure. What we found is that the promoters that have come in and, event promoters, not just the concert, but other things, the 5Ks and things like that, are looking for a process, filling out a form, filling out an application, and then, the directions of what they need to do with zoning and what they need to do with police and basically getting a plan in place before the event. And that's what we're looking to do here. In a timely manner. We did run into time issues in some of the events, and it actually became a serious issue with one of the during the concert. We almost didn't have traffic control because fire police had not been put in place, and that's something that would have been addressed in a permit process.
But wouldn't it make more sense, as opposed to doing a township-wide ordinance, to sit down with the owner of the horse show's grounds, or the horse show association in particular, and work out so that they can amend their contract in renting the grounds to include all the things that you need in the time frames? I'm sure that they wouldn't mind working with you in that regard, as opposed to putting out an ordinance that affects every township resident, every hunt that could happen, every little 5K race that may want to happen. It makes having an event extremely difficult.
Right, and that's not what we're trying to do, but we are trying to get structure to it. We can't have people come in the night before or the weekend before and say they're going to have 2,000 people with a 5K and say, we're coming through your township. We want to make sure that things are done in a timely manner so we can prepare for these things, for road closures, so we can notify residents that roads are going to be closed, so we have officers available. So what we want to do is have a time schedule here. And I'm open to anything with the horse show grounds. Again, you guys have been great, and I really appreciate working with you. And over the years, it's been, we have a great relationship. So I'm open to that. This was a suggestion put out that came and was put on the agenda. Again, I wanted to sit down and talk to you about this, and I still am going to do that. And I still think that we need to have something throughout the township, though, to basically address events and give structure. And it's not to prohibit anybody from having an event. That's not what we're all about. But what we want to do is have it so that a person walks in and says, hey, we're going to do, or an organization says, hey, we're going to do a 5K. What's the process here? And then we can walk them through it and say, this is what you have to do, submit this, and then we'll get ready, and then we'll have your event. So at the end, you'll get a permit issued, you can have the event. That's what we're looking to do.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I think you could do a whole lot of that by setting up some structure minus a whole permitting section of it, because I just don't think that that's very resident friendly to the people living in the township. It's, this is not Philadelphia. This is West Vincent.
But we still have events that need to have structure, and we need to get permits issued. We make sure they're done safely. All we worry about is safety. That's the biggest issue.
And I think that everyone, it's a good concern. Being concerned about safety is a very good concern. I just think that this really steps way over the bounds of that. I mean, just some of the information that you're asking for in here is just it has nothing to do with safety. It has to do with, like, finding every last detail of it. And it's about fees. I mean, when you really get down to this is all about fees. And I think that's a pretty bad rub too.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, Maria, and that's why we're talking about it. And again, we're taking suggestions on this right now. Again, looking at it from my perspective, though, I would like to get a structure in place to get a permit issued at the end. And then that way we make sure that all of our bases are covered. Everything is covered from A to Z, and that includes zoning, public safety, traffic control, and everything else that might be involved.
I may be naive, but couldn't that be done on the website tomorrow, saying that if you're looking to have an event in West Vincent Township, you have to talk to the police department, and then the police department would have a piece of paper that has, these are the things you have to be considered, and you know what, you're in and you're out and you're done.
I agree, but without an ordinance, what's the authority to enforce it?
And without fees. Got it. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah. Wendy Silverwood.
Hi, I'm involved in the Labor Day weekend event as well as various horse shows here and in New Jersey. And so I just wanted to address, coming from someone trying to put on a one-day horse show or a two-day horse show. Specifically, you've got restrictions here on basically PA systems or a sound system, not to start until 10 a.m. Monday through Thursday, and 11 p.m. and 10 a.m. Friday and Saturday. So horse shows typically start at 8 a.m., whether you're holding that on a Saturday or a Sunday. And we do have multiple 3-day shows at the grounds starting on a Friday. So that's something that will have to be addressed. And then you've got a requirement here about copies of certificates and licenses for possession and ownership of animals as required by state and federal regulations. So I don't know exactly what you're trying to refer to that here and how one would I don't know how you would, I don't know what that means. If you're running a recognized show, we all have to show that at the show office, your membership. So both the horses are all microchipped by their owners, and the so I don't know how you would oversee that. There's
Got it.
So I don't know if there's some way to make it easier for an incoming show manager at the show grounds to tick off on like the contracts that Ed would be putting out. Here's what your requirements are. I know when we're putting on a recognized show, a USEF show, we have to run specific to their requirements, and I can give you that info, and it's pretty stringent. And then there's a steward's report that comes in after that. So there's certain guidelines that if you're doing a recognized horse show, whether it's hunters, jumpers, dressage, it's pretty onerous. Otherwise, we get hammered by USEF. So I can give you that information as far as on the horse show end of things, and it does address safety and equine welfare, and there's minimum standards that the facilities have to have, which would help answer a lot of questions as far as horse show events that you could probably peel out of this, a lot of this wording. So I can talk to you on that end.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Do we just want to ask Wendy to forward that to office@westminstontwp.org?
That's
Or
fine.
Chief at?
Can I jump in? Just, again, I'm willing to come and sit with anyone and look at the details of the ordinance. And I don't want to get into them now, but what Wendy said was in the current ordinance, you want the list and identification about animals 45 days before the event. 45 days before the event in the small shows, people don't even know if they're going to that show or not. So that I'd like to just work through the details with someone and say, I understand you want controls, but this is a control that's overbearing and it's not going to work. So again, feel free to contact me, set up a meeting with whoever you would like in the township, please.
Thanks for the
Ed.
feedback.
This is Barb Van Horn again. I agree with what the other folks have said. And if you really look at this in detail, as Wendy and Ed pointed out, 11D, certificates and licenses for every animal, it's ridiculous. And I think we really would like to sit down with you guys and go through this. And I don't know where this language came from. Obviously, some attorney prepared it who has no idea what our events are. But so I think we really should set up a meeting, because I think those of us involved at the horse show grounds are feeling, again, like it's eminent domain all over again in a different guise.
Thank you,
For the
Barb.
record, this attorney didn't prepare the ordinance. It came from another township.
Okay, Joe. Anybody else? Michelle?
Yeah, I'm unmuting Brian Curry. Go ahead, Brian. Brian, you're not muted.
Locally muted. Now I'm good.
Yep.
Hey, we're getting the system down slowly. This is almost a prime example of why having information of various proposed ordinances, resolutions show up before a meeting, because it's obvious that some people have seen this, others of us have not, and we're trying to visualize what's being said. I can see the points that some of the people have raised, that I'm going to say horse people that know what they're doing. Plagiarism in the way ordinances, rules, regulations, laws are passed is common, but it really does come down to what the local situations are. Mike, the chief, it sounds like this got out ahead of you somehow, and that's really not a good thing. But I think it can be, corrected. I'd like to see it going forward. It sounds to me, have people put in written comments and then get everybody together so that they know what other people's comments are, and maybe can condense down and focus to get to something that works. I see the issues, but basically it's, it sounds like we're taking a sledgehammer to a finishing tack. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Brian, am I on mute? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Mike.
Yeah, hey, Brian, I concur. I completely agree. We need to sit down and we need to bring everyone to the table. And that was my intentions, and that did not happen. So unfortunately, I do think that we need to sit down and talk about all this and going forward about getting input from everyone. So.
Okay.
This is Barb Van Horn again, I think, and Chief, I appreciate that. And we really do want to meet with you. But I also want to say I'm a little appalled that an ordinance would be put forth just by copy and pasting from some other township without it having been reviewed. Had somebody really read this, and I guess I'm talking about our attorney, this is outrageous. And I'm an attorney myself, or I was before I retired.
Thank you, Barb. Anybody else, Michelle?
I don't see anybody.
Okay, well, I'm sure we're going to be discussing this again. So if you could put that on the website, the ordinance, and have people comment on it, then we'd have something better to propose at our next meeting.
Yep.
John?
Do that.
Okay.
Not a problem.
All right, thanks. All right, so next on the agenda is the renewal of the Miller and Guest farm leases.
Mike, if I could jump in here. The Sustainability Committee has been weighing in on these leases for the purpose more to make sure that if a farmer is not going to be leasing any longer, that he leaves the soil in good condition. And we don't quite have all of the wording that would be practical just quite yet. So I would just request that we put this off for another 2 months.
When do the leases have to be renewed?
Well, they don't have to be renewed. And Steve Bazil, if you can come in, if you're still here.
Good. What were you saying there?
So they don't necessarily have to be renewed in order for them to continue to farm. It's just that we're going to be a little behind schedule in getting the new leases out.
I disagree with that, Bernie. I think they need to know what's available to them. So you're saying we could tell them in January that they can't plant alfalfa. When this is the time of year, that you buy your seeds and stuff for next year is right about now. So I think that their leases allow that they can opt in within at least 30 days before the end of the lease. The leases expire at the end of December. So we have maybe the rest of this month to do something, but other than that, we're violating the leases that we already have with them.
Okay.
I don't
So-
know that I agree that we're violating leases that we already have with them.
Well, the lease will terminate December 31st, so we have to approve the leases or not approve them by the end of December.
Okay, well, I'll take this back to the Sustainability Committee and see if we can't get that language in before December's meeting.
Okay, so we're table.
Table till December.
I disagree. We've got, as I said, this is a active process of the farmers' expectation about the availability of land for them in the coming year. And what is it we wanted to say, Bernie, that they will leave it in better shape or as good a shape as they got it in?
Exactly.
And what kind of baseline do we use? I believe that all of them have already made the land better than when they got it.
I don't know that I agree with you, but I'm not.
Okay, well, Bernie, how is that going to work? So we take a soil sample today, and
Yep.
then at the end of the lease, we take another soil sample and see what the difference is?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then what do we do when we find out that it's whatever what would we be sampling? And so are you suggesting we put something punitive in the lease that if
Well, that's for the
soil
lawyers, that's for the lawyers to figure out.
Well, no, we would have to figure that out before, well, the lawyers could be involved, but we'd have to figure it out before we sign the lease. So they would have to return it back to the state it was in when we wrote the lease.
and some of these leases have been continued every 5 years since 2005. So
Yeah, but
how are
that-
we going to baseline
No.
that, Mike?
No, we
Mike, you know-
baseline it on today's soil, not past soil.
We have actually taken soil samples from the Fellowship Road property when Tom Wolzanowski took over. I couldn't begin to tell you where that information is at this point, but we did try to start that process.
Well, and Mike,
Okay.
there's Mike Hoga and Mike Schneider. I think there's two kinds of testing, and we know that the farmers are doing the tests they need to make sure the soil, that they enrich the soil as they need to for the crops that they are planting. They've been coming and talking to the Sustainability Committee for 2.5 years now. And we were going to get the revised lease language a couple of months ago. We don't have that. I don't think it's right to hold up the farmers because we're trying to manage them by committee.
Yeah, but we're not trying to hold them up. I mean, they can continue on.
Well,
we just
Yeah,
need
it's
to
a collaborative process. I've already talked to Stanley. And I have to tell you, anything with a contract is negotiable. All we're trying to do is insert language that allows us to come in and test the soil. That's it. We're not engaging in any type of punitive action against the farmers. So I don't know why there's this resistance to it. We just want to make sure that the soil in its current condition, if and when that farmer should stop farming that lot, is in the same condition it is when we gave it to them. That's it.
And what are we going to do if it's not?
Well, then we can discuss that. Then perhaps we could put in a contract a provision that we'll offer them the opportunity to remediate it first, or we'll remediate it and seek reimbursement for the cost of remediating it from them.
Okay, but what's the test going to include? Because like Sarah just said, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a farmer. so I
Yeah,
don't know.
and that's what we're in the process of determining. We're talking to the experts on that. And once again, we're not looking to force anyone to engage in organic farming or anything like that. What we don't want them doing is depleting the nutrients in the soil and then moving on. And I have to tell you, my impression is from the farmers that we have, they're not. They're doing everything to be good stewards of the ground that they have, and we should all be fine. But I'm a big fan of trust but verify. And I think we, as in our fiduciary obligation to make sure that the township grounds are well maintained should be taking that and engaging in verification that the grounds are not being depleted or there's toxins being put in there.
Well,
Steve,
there's
we
going to be
already-
toxins put in there for.
Steve,
fertilizer.
we already have the right to test the soil. That doesn't have to be in the lease. It's our land. They know that. What you want is different tests than what they do themselves. And so we're not asking them to do our business. We have our own right to go and test that soil when we want to. So that
Okay, and Sarah, if we go in and test it and we find that the soil has been depleted of nutrients, what right do we have then?
Steve, you know who these farmers are.
I do, and I talked to Stanley. I had a nice conversation with him the other day, and I like Ken. And I'd love to have him there for the next 500 years. But we, as a sustainability committee, have taken on a number of objectives and initiatives. And one of them is, let's just make sure that the grounds that we have that we're leasing out to the farmers are being well taken care of and that they're being good stewards of the land. I believe they are. So it's a non-issue. I don't know why it's a problem to incorporate that into a lease.
Because
I guess it's a wording of what you want to incorporate, I think. So I guess.
And that can be discussed. I'm a big fan of engaging the counterparty in a discussion of what we put in there. I'm not looking. Let me tell you something. I am not a fascist. I'm not going to sit here and stick something up on someone's back end. Let's have a discussion with them. I had a very nice conversation with Stanley. I told him exactly what we were looking at doing, and he was fine with it.
Okay,
Well, but
that's great. So
for
we need
you,
that information.
You are not engaging with the supervisors on this, and that's the step you should be taking before you engage with the farmers.
I'll run everything by you guys before we do anything with the farmers.
And that's what we've been waiting for, and we don't have it. And it's our lease with the farmers. It's not the Sustainability Committee.
No, that's completely understood. And that's why we're still waiting to get some guidance from some of the experts on what we should be looking for. And that's why we're going to be asking the farmers, maybe give us a month or two of an extension before they renew their leases. The leases ought to renew. We're not going to throw anyone off their ground. We're not going to beat anyone up. I have to tell you, I'm the nicest guy in the world. Until you cross me like Mike did with this whole thing with the horse show. But come on. I'm a pretty reasonable guy, but I do think we should put something in place just to make sure that we're monitoring the condition of the soil on the township grounds.
Okay, I guess that's what we have to figure out. What is it that you're testing? What is it that they have do to the property that could change what you test? I just don't understand enough about it, I guess.
Neither do I. That's why we're engaging in that fact finding.
Okay,
Well,
so we have leases that are up December 31st. The farmers want to know if they're going to be farming it. So we need to tell them whether they're going to be farming it. And I guess, technically, I guess we could go to a 1-year lease until.
Stanley only has 1-year auto renewals. Ken's the only one that has a 5-year.
No, Tom has 5-year.
No, but Stanley Guest is up and Ken are up this year.
No, but you said only. Tom also has a 5-year lease. So and I am proposing that we move Stan to a 5-year lease. When
I already discussed that with him. I already did. I asked him why his lease was different from everyone else's, and he had no idea why.
Right, and so I talked to him about it, and I said, would he accept a 5-year lease? And he said yes.
Yeah.
And
did he tell you I already talked to him about that?
Steve, he said then he could plant alfalfa, but he'd like to know soon because it affects what he does with his seed order, like right now.
Okay. Well, why don't we do this? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to use vague language to describe the soil testing we're going to do. I'm going to send it to you, to Mike, and to Bernie to take a look at. Then we can send it over to the attorney to take a look at. And if it's okay, we'll insert it into a new contract, new lease, and we'll make all the leases dovetail because we have 2 different types of leases out there right now.
Yeah, I was going to question that, by the way. We have 2 different prices.
Yeah.
Gary, and I didn't know why.
Neither do I, and neither did Stanley.
Okay.
And Mike, the concept, like Schneider, of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've got 3 really good farmers, and it's been working very well.
No, I'm in
And-
agreement. I'm fine with it, Sarah. But I'm not going to just
And we
say
don't have
that.
to put in the lease what we intend to do. If, you know, if we're going to be testing our soil, that doesn't need to go into the lease. We just need to agree not to screw up their crops when we're doing it.
I don't think that's Steve's point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Um,
not.
It's
Sarah,
not-
what specifically is your concern? We're not trying to screw the farmers. We're not.
Well,
We have a
okay, wait,
fiduciary
let's back
obligation
up,
to
Steve.
make sure
Let's
that
back up.
township properties are maintained.
Okay, but if you're trying to push a organic type of
No, we are
farming-
not pushing an organic method of gardening. We are simply trying to. We've taken it so low. Basically, unless these guys are the worst characters in the universe, they'll be fine. And I've already. And I have to tell you, I know two of the farmers. We have nothing to worry about them. I don't know the third, but I'm sure he's equally competent and responsible. We're just making sure it's not in there sucking all the nutrients out of the ground and not and or using some truly horrific agents in there. That's it. And we're not even looking for horrific agents at this point in time. We're just looking to make sure that they're maintaining the ground. Are you familiar with the concept of rotating crops?
Yeah, but yes, but Steve, they're going to take care of their soil because they have to grow things each year for 5 years. So
That's exactly right. And I trust they will do that, but I'd like to be able to verify that they do.
What's that?
And they feed those crops to their animals. These are not guys that are selling those bales of hay down the street. These guys are taking that back and feeding it to their animals.
That's right. So if they're doing everything right, what's the issue with just making sure?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. What's the issue of putting this requirement in their lease when you're saying what you want is for us to be able to test our land? We already can do that.
And our remedy, if it's not being taken care of properly, is what?
Nothing.
And I asked you that much earlier in this conversation.
That would be a breach of contract, which means it would have to be embodied in the terms of the contract for it to be a breach.
Right, and you would have.
And I'm sorry, we have our township attorney on the line, right? Chime in if I'm wrong.
But Steve, if you're not specifying what you're going to test for and what the consequences will be, and you're saying you're going to be able to get this done in a month or two, when the Sustainability Committee has been looking at this for at least 2.5 years, and you have met Tom Olsen-Elsie, because he came to at least 2 sustainability meetings to talk to you, one time with Ken both times. So you've met all 3 of them. And anyway.
Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to give you a bad hair day. I really am not. Like I said, I had a very positive conversation with Stanley about it. I'm sure I would have one with Stan and with Tom. I don't see why. I have to tell you, we all know, I'm highly confident that they're doing everything right on the grounds. But you know what? 23 years from now, I don't think Ken Miller's going to be on the ground still. So I don't know why we have a problem putting something in the contract that we use for the township now that in the future will protect us from someone that might come in that's not as good a steward of the ground.
If we have somebody who's not a good steward, I don't think we want to wait till 5 years have passed and they've ruined it. We know about what some other municipalities have had to do with farmers that cause problems. And one of the things, if we lose those farmers, is about a policy for us about how we vet new farmers who take over the land.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see that putting what we want to do to test our land into their lease is any reason to hold up the lease.
Okay. Well, I mean, you could do something like a 5-year contract, but let's see, how do you do this? Or, boy, I'm trying to think of a way you could give them 5 years, soil's tested every year, and if there's a problem, you identify and ask them if they want. I don't know. I guess I don't know.
Well, you can identify it and ask them for them to provide, their response to it, at which point we would be able to engage them in a conversation with whether or not what we're saying is an issue is correct or not. And if we're correct, then they would be offered an opportunity to cure, to make it right. And if we're wrong, then we shut up.
Yeah, well, okay. Whenever you get into soil, and I mean, I guess if you have a test, if you test the soil today, would that soil change by May?
I gotta tell you, I don't know. I'm an attorney. I'm not a dirt guy. I don't know.
Well, that's my problem.
Farmers would
You
know.
gotta-
And that's why we have to
these
engage them in the conversation regarding the language. And I have to tell you, I had such a good conversation with Stanley. I mean, let's talk to him about, he understands where we're coming from. Let's work collaboratively to find language that would work for everyone. I'm not, believe me, I'm the least intrusive government regulation guy in the world. I think if you didn't get that from my comments earlier about this proposed ordinance, I don't know, you're on another planet. But we do have a fiduciary obligation, and the Sustainability Committee has made a decision that we're going to try to address this in the contracts that we have with township farmers. I just don't get why there's this resistance. I really don't.
Because it's taken so long to get to this point, and we're now at the decision point, and we don't have your input.
Well, then we'll get everyone to agree to a 90-day window for us to get the language together, run it by all the powers that be, make sure it works, and then put it into a new lease that will, by the way, be the same for Stanley as it is for Ken, as it is for Tom.
Okay, but also it has to be, the farmers are going to have to agree to it too.
I just said it'd be a collaborative process.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a
with that.
fan. I talk to, that's all I do. I get everyone in the room, we sit down and we have a heart-to-heart chat. Okay. And we can either reach an agreement or we can't. 99% of the time, we reach an agreement.
But Steve, you do understand why people are nervous, right?
I do, and I have to say, I know why they're nervous, and it's completely baseless. But now everyone's angry that I'm saying that, and now I'm the bad guy. I got to tell you.
Mike and Bernie, I have a suggestion that we proceed with the 5-year leases, and we let them know that when they're up for renewal, they will have other requirements added to them. Because if we've been working on it for a couple of years now and we're not there, we're not going to get this specification of what we're going to test for and what period of the city in which we're going to test and what the consequences of anything we find in the testing. We're not going to get that done before December 31st or in 90 days.
Well, then why don't we ask the farmers what they would be agreeable to?
Steve, I'm talking to Bernie and Mike right now.
Okay. Hey, Sarah, Steve's correct that we should ask the farmers if 1 year extension would be fine with them. And if they say yes, we could approve the contracts as is for 1 year if agreed upon by the farmers. And we'll revisit this next year, or the discussions will start next month and continue until the following year.
Yeah, and they'll be right in the middle of the process.
Steve, let us talk.
And Sarah, if you try to put a contract out on me, I'm going to find out about it.
After what you've already accused me of during this meeting, I think you're talking the other direction. Mike Schneider.
Yes.
So you're proposing a 1 year lease and time to get the right text for the testing and the consequences into the leases that we would renew next year.
Correct. And again, for the supervisors to agree to this, whatever's in here, I think, at least the farmers would have to agree to it.
All right.
Because I'm not a farmer, and I'm not going to agree to anything that the farmer does not agree to.
And for the record, Stanley only has a 1 year renewal. Okay, so we're only talking about 10.
Oh, okay.
Steve, we got that. Let us do our business for a minute. So I would like to make the motion to approve the renewal of the Miller and Guest leases for the term of 1 year at the same rate. And then that gives us time to work and it's contingent on the farmers accepting the 1 year lease. So we don't have to hold up until the middle of December to say, yes, John Granger called them all. They're all good with 1 year lease. Let's just go ahead so that we can work this out a little more calmly when Steve hasn't started out already high as a hot air balloon or something.
Do we have a second?
Okay, I'll second that motion. I can live with it.
Okay, any questions? No, good. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hold on a second.
Damn it. Yes, Brian.
I raised my hand and I waited very patiently and I listened to Steve. It sounds like you're screaming into the phone. It's flat painful. I agree with the 1-year extension. I have attended many of these sustainability meetings and I have listened to this topic, been gummed to death, up one side and down the other. No one has ever come up with what you're going to test for and why it's beneficial, etc. I've heard, oh, we're going to go and get experts. Well, I've seen the experts, they don't show up, we don't have answers, they didn't get back to us, etc. I've looked up soil tests enough that I've got some idea. A basic 3 chemical thing, it's a cheap process. If you're going to go and say, okay, I want to go and know what type of herbicide, pest controls, et cetera, you're using, and I'm looking for those in the soils, it's a different test. It's much more expensive. And when you start doing those, now you have the potential for impacting the farmer's operation a lot. My suggestion is if you go for a 1-year extension, good thing. Have a firm end date that whatever the criteria are going to be for the next year needs to be in place by September. That gives them 3 months to figure out what's going on. And, this, as I said, this has been talked on for years now. It's been gummed to death and it's getting nowhere. If you can't do it in 9 months, something's really wrong. You need criteria for people to work with. And draining the soil, it's a hard process to go with. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of a payment for reclaim.
I make the motion to approve the payment application number.
You got to vote, Mike.
We did.
What?
We voted before you even got on the line there, Brian.
And did last time. For reclaim application number 9 in the amount of $63,578.75 for the Bryn Coed demolition.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments out there? I'll wait a second this time.
I don't see any.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Sorry, Nick. You had to be last. They should have put you first. Now we need the approval for Weatherstone Commercial escrow release number 1.
I make the motion to approve Weatherstone Commercial Phase 2 escrow release in the amount of $468,560.13.
I'll second the motion.
Any comments or questions?
Brian Curry has his hand up.
Okay.
Okay, I should be. How many more releases do we still have with this? And what is the approximate total of the other releases?
I can answer that for you, Brian. This is Brian Kulikowski speaking. Brian, this is the first release request from the commercial area for phase 2. And they approximately have 36% of the initial estimate. The initial escrow is still being retained by the townships. This is the first one. And I leave it up to Nick to have any idea of when they may make their second one at this point.
Will the second one finish it up?
Nick, you didn't come through. Your microphone's turned off.
Can you guys hear me?
Now I gotcha.
Yes, I mean, we're going to be starting the second half, I should say, or the remaining 36% in the spring. And then, it's going to take time to construct that. And then once that's all installed and everything's good, then we'll apply for that, probably just the final escrow release amount.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Any other questions out there?
No, I don't see any.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we're back. Now we're to public comment, non-agenda.
I have one item, Mike.
Okay.
There's so many people on this call. It's really exciting. We are soliciting volunteers for committee appointments for next year. And so I just want to welcome all of these extra people who are at this meeting. It's really a surprise to see 40 people when we come in. So please consider looking on the township website. The volunteer application is there. You just send it in to Kathy. And I think John Granger has a document that will get posted soon that describes each committee briefly and the number of vacancies in those committees. So that's it. I'm done. Thank
Okay.
you.
Great. Anybody else?
I don't see anybody.
I move to adjourn.
Nice. Good one, Bernie. I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank
Have a
you.
good one,
Bye.
guys. See ya.
Thank Kathy and Michelle for managing us so well.
I tried. You're welcome.